Welcome to Afterlife Experiences. If our content intrigues you, don't forget to show your support by giving this video a thumbs up and joining our community of subscribers. Now, let's dive right into today's NDE experience. I had been driving along the Queen Elizabeth Way, traveling from Buffalo to Welland, Ontario. It was late, and the weight of exhaustion from my life felt heavy on me. My days were consumed by long hours of a demanding 40-hour job, coupled with the energy I poured into several music projects. Every fiber of my body was drained. My eyelids felt like they carried the world's weight as I drove. I often found myself making the trip between Toronto and Buffalo, and tonight was one of those familiar weary drives. This time, though, I wasn't alone. My girlfriend was sitting beside me, and I was taking her to her parents' home in Welland. The drive was quiet, the night pressing in around us. The hum of the car was almost soothing, too soothing. I didn't realize how tired I was. The road in front of me seemed to blur, and before I knew it, I had fallen asleep at the wheel. The next thing I became aware of was the strange sensation of leaving my body. It was as if we were floating above ourselves, no longer tethered to the physical world. We were holding hands and our spirits were quickly rising, being pulled upward toward the sky. The earth below seemed distant as we soared higher, the cold air brushing against us as we flew straight up. It was an odd sensation, like flying without wings. We moved through the air for what felt like a minute, maybe more, and soon a landscape came into view. It wasn't the earth I knew, but something else. It was peaceful and quiet, a twilight scene with the soft glow of darkness settling over a countryside. I could make out trees and bushes in the dim light, the serenity of nature enveloping us. It felt like we had arrived somewhere safe, almost dreamlike. But then, something interrupted our journey. Out of nowhere, 4 figures appeared. They weren't human, at least not in any way I could fully understand. These beings were towering, each standing about 10 feet tall, their forms barely visible, as though they were made of the air itself. The only thing I could make out was a vague, ghostly outline of their bodies, like they were there, but not fully there. It reminded me of something I would see in a movie, like the effect of being invisible. But this wasn't fiction. This was happening to us. 2 of these beings came to my side, and 2 to hers. They began gently separating us, but there was no fear, no panic. In fact, I was overwhelmed by the most profound love I had ever felt. It was a love so deep, so pure, that it felt divine, far beyond anything that could be experienced on earth. I felt safe, cradled by this emotion, much like a baby would feel nestled in its mother's arms. There was no resisting their touch. It felt like they were guiding us with purpose, and we trusted them completely. As they separated us, 2 of the beings took my girlfriend upward, continuing toward the beautiful landscape ahead. I could see them moving her further away from me. The other 2 beings gently guided me downward. It was strange because I felt this intense peace, love, and comfort. And though part of me wanted to protest, to shout and beg to stay in that place, I couldn't. It wasn't my choice to make. Instead, I felt a quiet voice inside me, not through words, but in my mind. It told me that I couldn't stay, that it wasn't my time. And then I could see it, a scene that hit me like a wave of cold realization. Far below, I saw my car, engulfed in flames. From what seemed like a quarter of a mile up in the sky, I watched the fire consume the front of the vehicle. My heart raced and I suddenly felt the sensation of falling, plummeting back toward the earth. My eyes snapped open and I was back in the car. Flames were licking at the front, dangerously close. Panic surged through me, but I quickly became aware that my girlfriend, who had been leaning on me as I slept, was no longer really there. Her body remained, but her spirit, that bright, loving essence, was gone. She was no longer in that shell. I had left her behind with those beings, and now I was alone. In a daze, I tried to move to escape the car, but something was wrong. My feet wouldn't lift, wouldn't move. It was as if they were stuck, and then I realized they had gone through the floor of the car. Fear gripped me as I tried again and again to free myself, but my strength was fading. I blacked out, only to awaken moments later still trapped. Each time I came to, I saw flashes of fire, felt the heat creeping closer. Then I noticed a figure approaching, someone coming toward the burning wreck. It was a man, a trucker who had seen the flames as he drove past. He had turned back to see if anyone was inside, and I was the one he found. His eyes widened in shock when he saw me, but he quickly reassured me, telling me not to worry, that help was on the way. His words were like an anchor in the chaos. I remember being pulled from the car by firemen, my body weak and barely holding on. The fire had reached the dashboard by now, the heat overwhelming. In and out of consciousness, I drifted, losing track of time as I was transported from the crash site to a hospital in Welland, and later across the border to a hospital in the US. Weeks passed. I found myself in intensive care, my body healing, but my heart shattered. The guilt of losing her, of failing to protect her, weighed heavily on me. I couldn't escape the grief. But one night, something incredible happened. She came to me, not in a dream, but as a vision, a glowing figure dressed in white, floating through the window. She was the same as before, filled with love, and though I couldn't hear her with my ears, I heard her voice in my mind. She told me not to blame myself, that everything had happened as it was meant to. Her words lifted a weight from my soul, even if just for a moment. I watched as she gently floated out of the room, passing through the door and into the hallway, where two nurses stood unaware. They didn't see her, but I did. I still wonder about it all. Even now it brings tears to my eyes. Writing this down is like reopening an old wound, one that may never fully heal. I have lived my life taking on challenges that many might avoid, pushing my body to its limits in ways that left me with countless injuries, broken bones, and trauma to my head. These injuries weren't a surprise to me. They were part of living like a daredevil, always testing the boundaries. But little did I know, these would only be the beginning of the most intense experience I'd ever have. During one of these moments of pushing myself, I encountered something extraordinary. I found myself separated from my body, watching it from the outside. It's strange to describe, like stepping out of your own skin, feeling weightless, and yet still being very much yourself. I floated, completely aware of what was happening, as if I was seeing life from a new and incredible angle. There was no fuzziness, no confusion. My mind was sharp, maybe even sharper than usual. It was like my normal consciousness, but clearer. I didn't feel like I was asleep or dreaming. It was as if I had simply moved from one place to another while still fully awake. The entire experience was surreal, but at the same time it didn't feel entirely foreign. It was as though I had been preparing for this moment, even without knowing it. My thoughts raced. Everything around me was happening so fast, much faster than I was used to. It wasn't just that time seemed quicker, it was that time had lost its meaning altogether. It was like I was floating in a space where time no longer mattered. There were no ticking clocks, no passing minutes. Everything was happening at once, yet it all felt calm, peaceful. The clarity of my senses was overwhelming. My sight was sharper than I ever remembered it being, even in the moments before the experience began. The world around me was vivid, and though I could still sense the presence of the beings around me, they were not like anything I had seen before. These were the spirit wranglers, humanoids who seemed both invisible and visible at the same time. I could see their vague outlines, almost like shadows, but they weren't quite shadows. It was like trying to see something through a frosted window, and yet I knew they were there. My hearing wasn't the same as usual either. It wasn't as if I was hearing with my ears, but with my mind. I could hear the thoughts of these beings, not in spoken words but as feelings, as vibrations that I simply understood. I heard them first, and then later, I heard my girlfriend in the same way. Her voice was there, but it wasn't sound. It was pure understanding, a connection that went beyond words. I was aware of things that were happening far away from where I was. It was as though my mind stretched beyond the place I stood, reaching into other spaces. These weren't vague feelings, but facts that I could later verify. I didn't travel through any tunnel like many others describe, but I didn't need to. I saw the beings, 4 of them standing about 10 feet tall, and while they were invisible in one sense, I could still tell exactly where they were by the faint outline of their humanoid forms. There was light, but not just any light. It was a mystical light, one that felt alive, as if it carried with it the knowledge of the universe. It wasn't blinding or harsh, but soft and almost comforting, though I can't say I saw an otherworldly light shining directly. It was the kind of light you don't need to see with your eyes. It just exists around you, part of everything. The place we were in felt like another world entirely, somewhere beyond the one we know. It was dim, like the twilight of a peaceful evening, with a landscape that resembled a park or countryside. It was distant, as if we were just on the edge of something much greater, a place I could feel but not yet reach. The emotions that washed over me were indescribable. I felt a love that was so deep, so all-encompassing, it was impossible to fully grasp. It wasn't like the love we know on earth. It was purer, divine, beyond anything we could experience in our mortal lives. Along with that love came a sense of peace that filled me entirely, a joy that was so immense it seemed to burst out of my soul. In that moment, I felt completely at one with everything. I wasn't just a person in a place. I was connected to the universe, to the very fabric of existence. It was as though, for a brief moment, I understood everything. Everything about life, about the universe, made perfect sense. Scenes from my past rushed through my mind, flashing by out of my control. It wasn't just my life I was seeing. I caught glimpses of the future too, not just my own, but the world's. I came to a place, a boundary that I wasn't allowed to cross. I could see the Twilight Plateau in the distance, but I knew I couldn't go any further. I had to leave my girlfriend there. I was being turned back. Before this experience, I was a liberal agnostic, hopeful that there was something greater beyond this life. After what I lived through, I knew, without a doubt, that there is more to life than what we see. There is a place for us beyond this world, a place with God, but it's not exactly the way most religions describe it. I can't quite follow the path laid out by others anymore because I've seen something that most haven't, and it's changed me forever. I now know that the love those beings showed me is just a glimpse of the divine, and that our time here on earth is a temporary gift. After the experience, my values and beliefs shifted. I feel that I have knowledge that few people do, and I wish I knew how to use it to help others. I believe we all have a place with God after this life, but most religions don't quite get it right. The experience was unlike anything I had ever heard of or imagined. I encountered beings that were beyond human comprehension, and they communicated with me in ways that went beyond language. I saw and felt things that confirmed to me that there is so much more to our existence than this mortal life. Though I've shared this experience with a few people, I've never been fully certain of what to do with what I now know. I hope in some way that by telling my story, it helps someone, offers comfort, or opens a door to understanding that we are not alone, and that there is a love greater than anything we can imagine waiting for us.